We are at the end of chapter 20 in the book of Shmuel Beis, and yesterday we touched upon an interesting law regarding not giving up one's own life in order not to transgress a sin, but regarding giving up someone else's life in order not to be killed. And I mentioned that there's a big argument between the in the halachic among the halachic codifiers about what does one do. Now, thank God we live in somewhat safe times where we hope we don't have such issues. But not that long ago, you did have issues like this in Europe, and it could be, chas v'shalom, there are dangerous places. And so it's interesting that this story of Sheva ben Bichri is brought in Jewish law. So, for example, in Maimonides, where he talks about when is one obligated to give up their life instead of transgressing a sin. So Maimonides writes, similarly, if Gentiles told a group of Jews, give us one of you to kill, and if not, we will kill all of you. So they're asking the Jews to give one up, or we're going to kill all of you. They should allow themselves all to be killed rather than give over a single soul to the Gentiles. However, if the Gentiles single out a specific individual and they say, give us so-and-so, or we will kill all of you, then it's different. Then it's a different law. If the person is obligated to die like Sheva ben Bichri, they may give him over to them. Initially, however, this instruction is not conveyed to them. In other words, we don't really publicize this law. But if he is not obligated to die, they should allow themselves all to be killed rather than give over a single soul to the Gentiles. And the reason for this law is that we're not allowed to cause someone to be killed. By handing someone over to the Gentiles, it is as if we are killing them physically. And by not handing the person over, so, we're just not doing anything. But handing the person over would be physically causing someone to be killed, and we would be sort of like actively killing the person.
Rebbe?
Yes.
I think these days, especially with all these wonderful sensitivities that people walk around having, I feel, at least when I express it, I don't express it as Jews and Goyim. The Torah mandates that we do not turn over anything to a non-Torah authority. And therefore, we can't...
We just lost you, Isaac. Hello, Isaac?
A Jew to a non-Torah authority, because he's governed by Torah law. We're governed by Torah law. And, you have to get the Goyim into it. Who it is, what it is irrelevant. And I think you're accomplishing the same thing.
Right. The story is learned from, it's connected to this story of Sheva ben Bichri, because the Rambam himself brings it. And the story with Sheva ben Bichri is not exactly a case of Goyim. It's a case of Jews. But we see the example given is generally a case of Goyim, because that's the only ones who normally would you would have these issues. In other words, the practical case.
These days we have Erlich Goyim. That's the problem. I don't want to distinguish between Goyim and non-Goyim. We do it according to Torah or non-Torah.
We'll call it anti-Semites. So the anti-Semites, if they have a group of Jews and they tell us that we either have to give one over to them or they're going to kill everyone. So you're not allowed to give anyone over, except if they ask for a specific individual and that person is guilty of the death penalty anyway, like Sheva ben Bichri, and this is what the Rambam brings, then you could give him over.
Right.
It's not a halacha that is supposed to be.
You can phrase it another way also, in terms of if they come over to you and say, if you don't give us Isaac Yaroslavich, we're going to slaughter 100 of you.
That's for sure.
Then you look to see whether or not he's guilty of whatever it is and what they want and what the einish is. You can make yourself meshuggah till tomorrow. But if they surround your city and say, unless you give us 10 sacrifices a day, we kill you all, then you have to just be ready to all go.
Right, but you're not adding much, Isaac, to what we said.
I know. I'm just rephrasing it in terms of the way you're saying is unless they identified by name, but it's a whole different head trip in terms of how this arose, is what I'm saying. You're not going to have the same situation where they come to you looking for a person as when they just come and say, give us 10 of you. It's two whole different worlds.
Okay.
That's all.
Now this is connected to, and it's a complicated Talmudic discussion, but it's connected to a story in the Jerusalem Talmud where Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi used to be visited by Elijah the prophet. And there are stories about this and throughout the Talmud. And there was a story in a specific in one of the tractates. It mentions the story of a Jewish person who was running away from the Romans, and he hid in the city of Lud. And the Romans surrounded the city, and they demanded that this guy surrender. And if not, they're going to kill all the inhabitants of that city. And Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, who was the chief rabbi of the city, he handed him over. And Elijah the prophet stopped coming to visit Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi. Now, Rabbi Yehoshua fasted many fasts and asking God for forgiveness and that Elijah should be able to come back to him. And in the end, he did. Elijah came and visited him, but he was angry. And he said, am I to appear to someone who gives over to the enemy, to the anti-Semites, to the Goyim? And this is what he asked Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi. So Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi said, what do you mean? Didn't I follow the halacha? That's what it says. So Elijah answered him, and this is very cryptic. It's a little unclear of what we're supposed to take from this, but the answer that Elijah gave is that Mishnah an expression for the righteous, for the pious. In other words, that's the letter of the law. But is that for you to do? So it's a little unclear because what should he have done? Should Rabbi Yehoshua allowed everyone to get killed because he doesn't want to hand someone over, even though the halacha allows or says that that's the acceptable thing? So one of the commentaries explains that what Elijah was expecting of him was that he would like separate himself, and if they hand him over, fine, but you shouldn't be the one to hand him over. In other words, it's the halacha, but it's not something that should be like officially done from you. That's the way one of the commentaries explains. It's a hard Gemara to explain because it definitely sounds surprising that we're going to expect everyone to get killed because you should act like a chassid. You should act like a righteous, pious individual. So that's one of the understandings, that like it shouldn't be done through the hands of Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. It's the accepted halacha, and that would be something. But anyway, the issue based on this, there really is two opinions about this whole thing. The Rambam says that as long as you only give over the person if he deserves to die, like Sheva ben Bichri. However, there's a different opinion. It's an argument between Rabbi Yeshua ben Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. And the other opinion is that he doesn't have to be a wicked person like Sheva ben Bichri, even if he's not deserving of death. Nevertheless, they're asking for a specific individual instead of in such a case, they've sort of singled him out. It's not like you're handing him over. They've singled him out already. If they don't single someone out, then it's like you're handing someone over to get killed. You're actively involved. But if they've singled someone out already, so they're the ones who are basically killing him, and therefore it would be allowed to save the rest of everyone in order and allow him to get killed and hand him over, so to speak. So this is brought in the Code of Jewish Law, Yeridea, in the chapter 157. The Ramah brings down that if the Oivdei Kechavim, the Goyim, tell the Jews that give us one of you and we will kill him, don't give one person over to them. Only if they specify who it is, then you would be allowed to. Or then you would, to save everyone's life. But some say that even in such a case, you can't give someone over unless he's chayiv misa, he deserves death, like Sheva ben Bichri. So these are the two views. And then he talks about a case of women that the goyim say, give us one of you and we will we will violate her. You can't give her over. You can't give one person over. You let everyone be violated. You can't give one individual over. Lo yimasru nefesh achas mi Yisrael. So these are laws that unfortunately were applicable. They were practical, I should say. They're applicable, but they used to be unfortunately, in the tough times, they needed to. These were the halachas. Anyway, it's based on this story where what we just saw and what we learned about yesterday was that Serach bas Asher, she handed over Sheva ben Bichri to Yoav to get killed. In fact, she arranged that he got killed even before handing him over. They basically physically killed him before and handed him over. And why did they do that? To save all of their lives. And they were allowed to. And by Sheva ben Bichri, you have both reasons. Number one, he was deserving of the death penalty. And number two, he was already specifically the one who they wanted. He was they had specified who it is that they want. So in this scenario, this was the appropriate thing to do, and it's not like she did anything wrong. But it's based on this. This story is connected, is brought in the code of law with regard to these type of laws of causing a sin to be done or being actively involved in a sin, or giving up one's life or the community's life. I'm not sure who's first over here. I see we have a few questions. Let's see, Mordechai.
Yes, near the end.
Mordechai was first, I think.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, I guess good.
Okay. Yeah, near the end of Masech Yuma, it talks about the three things that you're not allowed to have to give up your life rather than violate. And regarding Shefas Damim, it says, how do you know that your blood is redder than the other person's blood?
Right. So that's the logic. But the point here, it takes it really a little further, because it's an entire community versus one person. So it creates it does create more complicated equation. In other words, that logic maybe wouldn't apply. It adds to the issue. And I think I saw one of the commentaries bring that up. And they mentioned that, I see over here, he brings up this issue that, you can't say one person shouldn't be sacrificed for another, but here you got a whole community being sacrificed. So they bring from the Merkevas HaMishnah that you're never allowed to deliver over a Jewish soul.
Unless. It's always an unless. Has to be.
No, you can't be the one to hand such a person over. It seems to take the logic a step further, and it's not just one person's blood isn't better than the other. Like, it seems like that's the initial element of the logic, but it does take it a step further. That when it comes to an entire community and so forth, you can't just say, the entire Jewish community, we shouldn't, their blood is much more than, we don't say that. We actually say that, no, you can't hand someone over. Now, if it's not handing the person over, that's another story. But if you're handing the person over, that you can't do. You can't actively hand the person over. So it's an element of, you can't actively hand someone over. Yes, Ben.
Yeah, I wanted to say a couple of things, actually. I think that there is a difference whether you give it to a Jew, another Jew, or you give it to the Goyim. Because with a Jew, like Yoav, you can see he tells you that he raised his hand against the king or whatever, that he would be killed one way or another. Whether we kill the whole city or not, he's going to be killed by me or by King David, because he sinned already, and he's going to pay with his life for it anyhow. But when you hand over somebody to a non-Jew, it means you don't believe in God. Because if you believe in God, you don't hand over a Jew to be killed when you know that if you fight, you still have a chance to win. But if you don't fight, you lost it and you killed another Jew. So if you fight, Hashem will help. That's what we believe. If you don't believe in that, that's a very basic belief that you need to believe in.
Mm-hmm. Well, what you're saying about the fighting back does, seem logical, that, you don't give anyone over, and if you need to fight. If you're able to fight, you definitely fight back. It is interesting about this, how they're learning it from this story, and the story of Sheva ben Bichri does seem to be, a case of Jewish people. So it is interesting how they're learning it from there. Now, I haven't gone through the entire discussion over there in the Talmud, so I'm not sure if it comes up why it mentions the case of Goyim, and if it's just because that's the practical application of it, even though it would apply to anyone maybe, but it's just that was the way it was, it was common. But if not, then you would need to figure out how we're learning from this story if there are differences between Jews and non-Jews. So it deserves to be looked into if you want to differentiate.
You see that with a
look into that.
non-Jew, the whole holiday of Hanukkah is a perfect example for it. 11 people or whatever it was that collected some other people and fought a huge army and won. So you always have a chance to win. But if you give up and give up the Jew, you're not going to win anything.
So what you're saying sounds...
That same army can come tomorrow and say, now we want this guy, now we want that guy.
Right.
What you're saying that's the end of the story.
I understand what you're saying. Sounds very good. But the only thing is, keep in mind that the Shulchan Aruch does talk about the scenario where you are allowed to and you should give someone over and where you shouldn't, and where maybe Midas Chasidus kicks in and so on. But there is laws in Shulchan Aruch that talk about this. So it doesn't always apply. In other words, there are scenarios where you do give someone over. There are scenarios where you don't. And it seems that everyone agrees, if it's Sheva ben Bichri, that if its person is deserving of the death penalty, then you would give the person over, even though you could tell me, well, why should we give him over? We could fight back. We see that logic is not always there. It is there, you're right. It could be there when a person is not like Sheva ben Bichri, but there are scenarios where that logic we don't take that logic into consideration, and we say...
Also,
but when the Russians arrested the Rebbe,
so you're not giving in, I see that. Okay.
That wanted to tell me that this is like the Holocaust. Okay, they arrested him. They were, and you don't know they were going to kill him.
Right.
Nobody was fighting back. Nobody was doing anything, and it was a terrible thing. So I don't think it's the right thing to do.
Well, they didn't give the Rebbe over. We're dealing with, if you canned over the Jew, that's what we're talking about.
Was because there were always people that were ready to fight.
That's why the Rebbe was saved, because people were ready to fight. I don't know if that's
correct. But you had...
Maybe, interesting. That's part of the story that I'm not aware of.
You had Cabos who were killed because they refused to do the selection for the Nazis, Yamach Shemam. There were times when the Nazis actually looked at the Capos and said, hand us 50 Jews, or we're going to get 200. And many of the Capos got themselves arrested rather than proceeding with it, Torah or not. But these are also extremes. The point is, on an everyday level, this happens without such ramifications. And the rules that apply. Meaning, if they just come over to you, Stam, as a Jew, and say, do this or whatever, you can't, absolutely. It's an absolute prohibition. If, however, it's not just Stam, Jew or Torah versus non-Torah, but there's more of a makar to it, and depending on the level of course, somebody, hand him over, we're going to kill. Arrest him, or we're going to block $1 million worth of goods. Government has to decide yes or no, or who or what. And Israel is faced with this a lot from the United States. Turn him over,
extradition
under the treaties and things like that. This issue comes up on
interesting.
A different heavy level.
Very interesting, Isaac. Thank you. There are cases of extradition from Israel, right? There are such scenarios, right? Interesting. Yes, Anna.
I just want to look at completely different aspect of the story. He actually was hiding in a city. He was not invited as a guest. He was not a leader of the community. he knowingly put the community at risk because he knew that he was hiding for some crimes that he absolutely was aware that was done. That's why I believe that it's really difficult to blame people who, knowing most of them, I'm sure, knew what he was, guilty of. And that's why I don't see it as a clear picture of just giving away one of their own in order to save the whole community. It was a person who violated their safety to begin with.
Right.
That's why I would not really see it. It's definitely an ideal kind of example, which almost never happened, that someone who knew that, okay, because of me, the whole community will be in danger, I will just do it myself. I think that the killing happened not because it was necessarily what Joab asked to do. It's because it was the only one decision that could be made. And again, it was not a conscious, willingly made decision. It was imposed on them. He did it with his action. And like I said, it was pretty human that they decided to give him a shelter to hide him from the, but when it came to a situation where it was him or the whole community, I see it as a kind of some logical explanation of it. Not that I in any way support that type of action, but things happened, and this is, again, you cannot compare it to a regular life situation. I think it's a little unusual.
Okay, so the thing is like this, Anna, what you brought up is a very interesting discussion, something that I wanted to touch upon, and that is that Serach Bas Asher, she came to Yoav and said, Yoav, I heard from Moses that you're supposed to ask for peace before destroying a city. And we want peace. We're righteous people. We're good people. We're followers of David. The way she said it, she might not have used those words, but she actually was saying things that implied like we are she calls herself Ir ve'Aim b'Yisrael. We are a metropolis, and which, of course, in a simple sense means that we are a popular city and we have, small, we're like the large city. But one of the commentaries says it means that we are like respected and praised, and literally we are a mother in Israel. That's literally in Nachalas Hashem. We are the heritage of Hashem, which means that we are followers of David. So what did Yoav reply to this? In other words, she's claiming that why didn't you ask for peace first? You're supposed to be this great person, which we'll see maybe in a chapter or two, in three chapters from here. It mentions what a great scholar Yoav was. It is surprising that he's not asking for peace. So what is the answer that Yoav gives? So there's an argument in the commentaries. One of the commentaries says that Yoav's answer is that I don't want us to kill the whole city. I only want him. I only want Sheva ben Bichri. I only want one person. But there's another answer that Yoav gives, and that is that the answer Yoav says is, I'm sorry, but it's not as you think, Serach Bas Asher. This entire town, your town, is a town that is rebellious. They have given refuge to, so they are a town of traitors. They are harboring this traitor in this town, and they are guilty, of being an accomplice to this criminal, and they are all part of it. And so that is one way of understanding it. In other words, that it's not as people as maybe you're thinking that everyone here is so righteous and it's just this one person ran into our town. Your people invited him, and they're giving him the safety of being able to stay there. I mean, keep in mind that if you remember the story of David and running away from King Saul, David had a very hard time getting refuge anywhere. He couldn't, they wouldn't let him in. And all of a sudden, this Sheva ben Bichri is able to hide out in this town. It definitely seems, it seems surprising that that they are, if they're not traitors, how did he get himself in there with such safety, and then that no one is like making room for Yoav to get in. It seems like he definitely has some friends and maybe supporters, and maybe everyone is supporting him in this town, or definitely the higher ups in the hierarchy in the government is supporting him and allowing him in. So anyway,
Rabbi,
that touches on our discussion today. Moshe, I feel bad. I don't want to take.
no, I just want to mention Mayor Lansky was a gangster, and he was extradited from Israel for for being a gangster, and considering he did a lot for Jewish causes later in his life, but he was somebody they just wouldn't accept him in Israel. They had him and they extradited him from Israel.
So it definitely is a big discussion, this extraditing, which Isaac brought up, and it has to do with this law that we saw in the book of the Code of Jewish Law, chapter 157, and also in the Rambam and the laws of Yesodei HaTorah about extradition and giving someone over to the non-Jews. Now, it doesn't mean we should let them go free. We should maybe judge them ourselves, and have a halachic law, have them have to, go through our court of, and a system. But in any event, there are laws about it, and I'm sure the Israeli government, is one of the reasons why they have this concept of not to extradite is because they wanna, to some extent, follow this way of thinking that's based on this story of Sheva ben Bichri not giving someone up. So whether they follow the law properly or not, obviously, we know that not everything is done according to Jewish law, but at least there's some element of it that we see there that they're trying to uphold.
Give it a break.